Hey guys, and welcome back to EQ Planes, and today I'll be flying back home to Calgary on Flair Airlines, but with a bit of a twist. That being that I'd be flying on Flair's Smartwings hybrid aircraft, which features the full Smartwings interior along with the Smartwings winglets and a livery that is featured on no other Flair aircraft in their fleet. Smartwings is a Czech airline that operates a number of 737 MAX 8s and 737-800s. However, this particular aircraft wasn't taken up by them, and when it went to Flair, it was rushed into service quickly enough that there wasn't time to refit the interior or even properly paint the aircraft. But with that being said, we'll get into more detail about the aircraft later in the video. Let's start with Flair's pre-flight experience in Vancouver. After having had a great time at the Rolling Stones concert, I'd make my way to Vancouver's airport where I'd spend the night pre-security. For whatever reason in Vancouver, I wasn't able to get my boarding pass online, which is odd because generally Flair will charge you for not checking in online. However, everybody on today's flight had to check in person at no extra cost. Another thing I've noticed that Flair has become quite strict on their personal item policy. The backpack is just small enough to fit into the container, albeit with a bit of shifting, and you can certainly expect your bag to be sized at the gate or at the check-in counter. The personal item is free, however you can get charged up to $90 if it's too large and counts as a carry-on bag, with baggage being something that, as a low-cost carrier, Flair will charge a fair amount for. Anyways, here's our one-of-a-kind Flair aircraft that we'll be flying today, registered Charlie Foxtrot Lima Quebec Oscar. This 737 MAX 8 was built, painted, and fully configured for Smartwings in 2019, however wouldn't end up being delivered to Flair until February of 2023. Here's actually a shot of this exact aircraft that I had taken in the summer of 2022 on a trip to Seattle. Now, although Flair has many ex-Smartwings aircraft that share that old Smartwings interior, including Charlie Foxtrot Lima Uniform Tango, which I flew both out to Vancouver and between Kelowna and Calgary last year, this is the only 737 MAX of theirs to feature this special scheme, as instead of being an actual paint job, it just uses decals to cover up the old Smartwings paint job, leaving the wingtips of the aircraft still exposed in the old Smartwings livery. Meaning that from an interior perspective, it certainly feels as if you're flying on Smartwings itself. Today I'd be seated in 18F, with this Smartwings X-Flair 737 seating a standard 189 people in an all-economy configuration. But now I'll briefly leave you with some taxi and takeoff footage from Vancouver before getting into more detail about the experience when we get in the air.
Attendants be seated for takeoff, thank you.
Now that we're on our way to Calgary, let's take a closer look at the seat and the details around it. Now, starting out standard for low-cost carriers, there's no in-house in-flight entertainment. However, there is a small device holder here which you can use to display a movie of your own on your phone. Although Flair does offer in-flight entertainment through their app, certainly no point in me looking at that today with these beautiful views of the Rocky Mountains below. Coming back around to the seat, the tray table was pretty standard and a good height above the knees. When it comes to seat padding, it's not the worst seat that I've ever sat in, with it being to the lower end of the padding scale, but I found seats like the ones that Lynx Airlines used to have been much worse. At 6'3", I found the leg room to be tight but passable, which is to be expected with a low-cost carrier. Recline was nothing special, with it being a very standard seat. Talking about the 737 MAX from a passenger experience perspective, it's a new aircraft, it's got big bins, and it's quiet. I've always enjoyed my rides on the 737 MAX, with this being my 19th flight on one. Haven't yet had the opportunity to fly the A320neo, only the CO family, so would like to make a comparison between the two at some point. The backseat pocket also contains your standard Flair branded safety card and a food and drink menu for purchase as well. And coming around for the loo review, it's your standard tight 737 MAX lavatory. Still not as tight as Air Canada's though. Looking around the cabin, you'll see further evidence of its future not to be with Smartwings on the carpet and bulkheads. But with that being said, stick around for this landing into Calgary and my final thoughts on this experience.
Switch off the fasten seatbelt sign. Mobile receiving and transmitting functions.
In the end, I'm glad I lucked out and got to fly on this unique Flair aircraft. It's not every day as a Canadian that you get the experience of flying a European narrowbody, especially within the borders of Canada, with this probably being the closest I'll ever get to flying on Smartwings. That being said, from a passenger comfort and experience level though, wasn't anything special, and if you're not interested in aviation, it would be a pretty normal experience. At the end of the day though, it's very much a case of you get what you pay for, and I think Flair delivers a pretty decent product given their price points. Domestic flying used to be really expensive in Canada, and Flair has helped to bring that price down a fair bit. With that being said though, there are big questions to what Flair's future will be and whether or not their business model is sustainable, with them being the last low-cost carrier left in Canada with the collapse of Lynx, Jetlines, and Swoop in the past year. I'll also be interested in seeing how much longer this Smartwings hybrid livery stays around, as Flair had a number of Air Europa hybrid liveries, but now they're only down to one, as the other two were painted at some point last year. I'm rooting for Flair's success as a player in the market, and I'm really glad to have them around providing cheap flights like this. I'd like to thank you guys for watching, and hope to see you guys back next time.